Today, we're diving into Nicole Walters' incredible memoir, Nothing is Missing. And let me tell you, this is way more than just a story about building a life from the ground up. It's like a manual, packed with these powerful mindsets that we can all use to live a little more boldly, especially when things get tough.
So the whole story kicks off at this major crisis point. Nicole Walters, super successful entrepreneur, TV personality, wakes up one morning and bam, half of her face is paralyzed. That signature big smile of hers, the one that was both a way to connect with people and, honestly, a way to hide what was really going on, it was just gone. All of a sudden, she couldn't just plaster on a happy face and pretend everything was fine.
And that really gets to the heart of her entire journey. I mean, we all do it, right? We grin, we bear it, we make sure everything looks perfect from the outside. But what happens when you physically can't pretend anymore? For her, this moment becomes the starting point for some radical honesty and discovering the power that comes from it.
Now, to really get her mindset, we've got to go back, way back to her childhood, where she was basically caught between two totally different ideas of what success even looks like, both coming from her Ghanaian immigrant parents.
So she had these two completely different blueprints for life. On one side, you had her dad's view, which was super rigid, very black and white. For him, success meant a prestigious title like doctor or lawyer. End of story. But then you had her mother, who had this quiet entrepreneurial hustle. She was always consulting, investing in people, and get this, she was secretly running a market stall back in Ghana, selling American stuff for a profit. Two totally different worlds.
All of this led Nicole to basically redefine the American dream for herself. It wasn't about the house and the car. No, for her, it was all about accumulating choices. The more options you have with your money, your career, your life, the more freedom you have to actually design the life you want. The formula was super simple. Money creates freedom, and freedom creates choices, and that became her real goal.
So, this whole quest for options, it was really born from a desperate need for clarity. And that's because her childhood was defined by the total opposite, just absolute confusion and chaos.
Just imagine coming home from school and the house is dark. The power's been shut off and you have no idea when it's coming back on.
Or picture your father dragging you along to sift through the stuff of an evicted neighbor, all while you're just terrified that one day that's going to be your family's life, just scattered on the lawn for everyone to see.
And then there was the emotional whiplash. After a parent-teacher conference where her teacher just gushed about what a delight she was, her father's only comment on the way home was a cold warning, "Don't be an embarrassment." It was this constant state of just not knowing what was coming next.
But right in the middle of all that chaos, she found an anchor. This one simple phrase became her compass. She started to believe that wherever there's confusion, that's a sign that something is just not right. It taught her to trust her gut and to always seek out what she calls fierce clarity, even when the clear path wasn't the easy one.
Okay, so she's armed with this new drive for clarity. But how did she actually start creating her own options? Well, that brings us to this amazing story about mindset in action, right when her family's money problems were hitting rock bottom.
The problem was pretty straightforward. She needed money, and she needed it fast. Her solution? Get on a game show. And the way she went about it is just a brilliant lesson in how to tackle a goal that seems completely impossible.
See, she didn't just cross her fingers and hope for the best. She built a strategy. First, she reframed the odds. She told herself, I'm not competing against 1,000 people, I'm competing against maybe 100 who are actually serious. Then she reverse engineered the goal, picking Wheel of Fortune on purpose because it's the one where you get to keep the cash you win. She hyped herself up with some powerful self-talk, and maybe, most importantly, she walked into that audition with what she calls stadium energy. Basically, she acted like she'd already won the whole thing.
And the result? You bet it worked. She walked away with over $12,000 in cash, plus an all-expenses-paid trip to Iceland. Her strategy, that mindset, it produced a real, tangible, life-changing result. It was proof that she could actually create her own luck.
And that brings us to the last, and maybe the most powerful lesson from her story. It's a philosophy that was born out of the absolute hardest time in her life, a time when it felt like everything was just falling apart.
So picture this. She's at Johns Hopkins on a full scholarship, which sounds amazing, but the pressure was just crushing. She's working a full-time job just to pay for rent and food. Then, her father gets diagnosed with Parkinson's, and on top of all that, she finds out she's pregnant, completely unplanned. It was just one thing piling on top of another, pushing her towards an impossible choice and ultimately, a huge realization. This was the vow.
the promise she made to herself while sitting in a health clinic. She realized that her lack of financial options, her lack of choices, was forcing her hand in one of the most personal decisions a woman can make. And that single moment became the rocket fuel for everything she did next. Money was never, ever going to be the reason she couldn't make a choice again.
And this experience really cemented her whole philosophy: choose your hard. Because let's be real, life is always going to be hard. There's no escaping it. Hating your job is hard. But you know what? Starting your own business is also really, really hard. The point isn't to find an easy life. The point is to consciously choose which hard you're willing to go through, to choose the struggle that's actually worth it because it leads to a life that you value.
And that all leads back to the title of the book and its core message. Even when it feels like everything is going wrong, when you are deep in the struggle, you have to realize that you are already enough. You've been collecting the tools your whole life, that resilience, that clarity, that stadium energy. Nothing is missing.
So in the end, the question isn't about finding some magic tool you don't have. It's about remembering to use the ones you've already got, especially when you need them the most. You already have what it takes to build the life you want. The only question is, which hard are you going to choose, and how are you going to show up for it?